We love family. We love what God's done in our family. And I will tell you, we're not a perfect family. We're a family who's growing in God's grace. So how many of you guys can identify with that? We're all growing in God's grace. Nobody's perfect. In fact, our dog's not perfect. We have a dog. His name's Shifu, and he's a Shih Tzu. Shifu the Shih Tzu. And it's named by Kung Fu Panda. And I remember when we got this dog, my wife and I decided we were going to get a dog. Now, my idea of a dog is a man's dog. It's like, a German Shepherd or like at least a Labrador Retriever, right? She wanted one that was small and hypoallergenic and this can, does well in the home. So she found this little dog, a Shih Tzu, and we drive down to this little tiny town just south of our city, and two farm ladies that were barefoot came out of a truck and was holding this bloated dog. And he was all matted and gross looking. I was like, oh, there's no way my wife's gonna pick this dog. And we looked at the dog and we go around to the other side of the car to talk about whether or not we're gonna buy this dog. And I thought, she's not gonna do this. And I said, what do you think? And she said, he's so cute. He's so cute. And I didn't see it. I couldn't see how cute he was because he looked like he's just a mangy mutt that just was never been taken care of. And so we paid $200 for this dog. And I asked if it was a purebred. They're like, oh, yeah, it is. It's not. And we take this dog home. And my idea of a dog is you throw a ball, it chases the ball, it plays with the kids. I get him in the backyard and he does nothing. And I thought, he's like either blind, deaf, like mentally handicapped dog. I had no idea what was going on. And then my wife, Shifu goes to the bathroom in the backyard and she finds worms. This dog was filled with worms. He was sick. And so he was just uncomfortable, sick, bloated. And I thought, this dog is such a mess. We take him to the vet. And the vet says, this dog's got like 5 different types of worms. And I'll tell you what, we get him on some medicine, clean him up, and he became a totally different dog. He chased the ball. He played with the kids. We still have him. He's like 12 years old. He's one of the best dogs a man could ever have. He knows like 5 really good tricks. I impress everybody that comes to our house with him. It's a lot of fun. And then I realized that's how my wife picked me. I was like a homeless man when we met. I had worms, I was a mess. And I don't know how or what my wife saw in that dog. I really don't know what she saw in me, but she saw something deeper. She saw something bigger than what the eye could see. She saw something with potential. I will tell you, life in general is not about where you're at. Life is more about who you're with. Life is about who you're with. The greatest human need is to know and to be known. Your number one need is to know somebody and to be known. The great thing about the gospel of Jesus Christ is that he knows you. He knows how many hairs are on your head. That's how intimately he knows you. Some of you, we know how many hairs are on your head. But God knows us so intimately. He knows our good. He also knows all of our sin and yet still loves us. Now, how many of you guys are thankful for the grace of God? Even though we were yet sinners, Christ, what? Died for us. He paid the price for it. Why? Because he loves you. He loved you first before you ever loved him. The gospel says, I love you for who you are, not just what you do. And there's nothing in your past that's going to make God love you less. And there's nothing you could do today or tomorrow of good works that's going to make him love you more. He just loves you. Aren't you glad that this is not a performance-based religion where we have to work really hard to earn his love? No, we want to do good out of his love, not for it. And there's a big difference there. And I'm so grateful that God loves us that way. But our greatest need is to know and be known. And that should happen in the context of your marriage. Your wife knows you more than anybody else. And that could be exciting and scary all at the same time. And your husband knows you more than anyone else. And it's unbelievably satisfying and fulfilling for that person to see you in your good and your bad, and to integrate both and to love you anyway. How many guys are grateful for that? By the way, that's how a church should be. That you should walk in through these doors with your mess. Let me remind you that this is not a museum for saints. This is a hospital for sinners. This is a place where we come and gather and to confess our struggles and our faults with each other and still be loved and helped. We're given grace, we're given truth, and time to grow. And that's essential for us in our thriving. But life gets isolated, though, and resentful and bitter when we lose attachment to God and to people. So the greatest commandment in the Bible is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and the second greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself, which is really the 10 commandments wrapped into 2 commandments. So the 10 commandments are not just arbitrary rules that God has made because he was bored and wanted to make your life miserable. The 10 commandments are God's way of showing us how to love him and how to love each other. The first 4 of God's 10 commandments teach us how to love him, and the last 6 of God's commandments teach us how to love each other. And loving each other is an expression of love to God. For example, the Bible says, "Thou shalt not covet." You guys ever seen that commandment? Don't covet your neighbor's stuff or your neighbor's wife. Why should we not covet? Well, here's why. Because when we value what somebody has above who they are, that's a great way of hating somebody. So when we break the 10 commandments, what we're doing is we are expressing hatred towards each other. You know, thou shalt not murder. A great way to show love for another person is to not murder them. Isn't that right? Don't kill them. Or at least don't have hatred towards them. Because murder doesn't just happen. It happens because we've fostered hatred in our heart for so long that it's easy now to want their life to end, or at least desire that. So the greatest sin then is a violation of the greatest commandment, to love God and to love people. Sodom and Gomorrah is the subject of our text today, and I think a lot of people have a lot of views or misconceptions of these cities based on maybe their lifestyle or the fruits of their lifestyle, but I really want to go deeper into why they lived the way they did and why their cities were destroyed. These were cities that turned what was once good into total chaos. They forgot the commandments to love God and to love people. And what's so interesting about these 2 cities is Sodom means burning, and Gomorrah, it means submersion. It gives us a picture of fire and water, both essential elements for life. They bring refreshment and they bring warmth and they allow us to cook and to bring life to us and to our families. But when fire or water are mismanaged, it brings forth death and it brings forth destruction when it's outside of its boundaries. You see, a fire in your fireplace may bring warmth, but a fire outside of the fireplace may burn the house down. You know, water is great when it's coming out of your faucet. It's not great when it's flooding through your house. So both cities were part of 5 associated cities on the southeast side of the Sea of Galilee. And it was described as once a very bountiful place, very much a place like Vancouver. It was refreshing, it was beautiful. Today, nothing can grow there, even to this day. It's an absolute desolate wasteland. It describes what could happen to our relationships, to our soul. Ezekiel, in the context of these verses, is warning the children of Israel. He's saying, listen, you guys are going down the same path as Sodom and Gomorrah, and it's going to bring about your own destruction and chaos. And the same warning is true for you and I today. If we can, in our homes, go down the same path and bring about the same destruction. In fact, in James 1:15, James warns, he says, when lust hath conceived, it brings forth sin. And when sin is finished, it brings forth what? Death. Sin just simply means to miss the mark. When we sin, we bring our own chaos and destruction to our home. What's sin? Sin is missing the mark. What's the mark? The 10 Commandments. Loving God and loving people. So we don't want to miss the mark, or else we'll bring about our own destruction. So both cities represent something that is good and essential for life, fire and water. When that which is good is used wrongfully or stewarded incorrectly, it becomes destructive. In the U.S., you saw on the news fires in California, flooding in North Carolina, and they brought about a lot of chaos and destruction and tragedy and heartbreak. And it's not good when they're outside of a boundary. So Ezekiel in chapter 16, verse 49, I want you to see what Ezekiel warns to the children of Israel in this time of their sin. He says, behold, in verse 49, this was the iniquity of your sister Sodom. Watch what it is. Pride, fullness of bread, and an abundance of idleness was in her and her daughters. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. And they were haughty and committed abomination before me. Therefore I took them away as I saw good. So there are three essential truths that bring order out of chaos. And I want to give them to you, right? Their humility, their generosity, and responsibility. He's saying they lacked humility, they lacked generosity, and they did not take up the glad acceptance of personal responsibility. That's what led to their destruction. And let me tell you something, in your marriage and raising your kids, and the health of this church is dependent on these three essential domains and elements in life. So let me go through them with you really quick. You guys ready? Number one, humility is essential for life in your marriage. Humility is essential for life in your relationship with your kids, or any relationship that you have. In fact, no relationship can thrive without humility. In fact, if you are more narcissistic, you're maybe like a dark triad, Machiavellian, you're psychopathic, like you're not going to have good relationships, you're not going to have good bonding with other people, and you're going to live in total isolation, depression, and anxiety. Pride destroys everything that's good. In fact, in Proverbs 13:10, the Bible says, only by pride comes contention. Do you guys see that? Contention happens in the home when there's pride, when I'm not getting my way, when things aren't going as ideally as I'd like them to be. But with the humble, you'll see mutual cooperation. You'll see grace-filled negotiation with each other. You'll see that it's not about me, it's about how I could benefit the life of the person that's across from me, whether it's your wife or husband or kid or friend, church member, doesn't matter. But listen, you cannot have healthy, thriving relationships without this element of humility. That's what destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, is their pride. It was pride that destroyed the relationship between Lucifer and God. Lucifer, who was once an anointed cherub, destroyed his relationship with God because he wanted to be bigger than him. So here's why pride is so evil, is because pride makes it impossible to see the relationship that you have correctly. It makes it impossible for you to see the other person. It makes it impossible for you to see the needs of the person across from you, because you only see them as a host, as something that you can get something out of. So when the soul, your mind and your emotions and your will are filled with self, then every conversation, every thought, all motives are shaped out of what I can get from that other person. Not about them, but what I can get from that relationship. How I can be above you. You look at them as more of like a source to maybe prop up your fragile ego. instead of a person that you can love and cherish and build up and encourage. So why is pride so detrimental to our relationships? Because the proud hear different things than what is being said. You know, it's like when your spouse confronts you about something, we interpret it as an assault against ourselves, and then we misrepresent what they said, and now we're arguing about what was meant by what is said instead of what was actually said, because we're not hearing things correctly. We're not listening to understand. We're listening to reload, to defend ourselves. So, do you know who loves the most, though? The type of people who love the most are the type of people who realize they've been forgiven the most. So for a godly husband, let me just encourage you with this. When it comes to this idea of humility, make decisions for what's best for the whole family, not just what's best for you. A proud husband's going to make decisions that's best for him, what's going to benefit him ultimately. But a humble, Christ-centered husband's going to say, you know, the decisions I make in this home is not just about me. It's what's best for my wife and my kids. What's best for everybody. A godly wife, is going to fight for what's best for everyone in the house, not just what's for her. So the proud say this: my need to be right is more important than my need to be right with you. That's what the proud say. I need to be right more than being right with you. But the humble say, my need to be right is not as important as my need to be right with you. I care more about us than about me. So let me just share this with you. The proud are incapable of seeing themselves as villains. In fact, the proud only see themselves as victims or heroes. The proud in their story, in every story, they're either the victim or they're the hero, never the villain. At least the humble could admit, man, I was a villain. This is where I'm going to take responsibility for my part. They'll always see themselves as the victim or the heroes in their own story, and that's what destroys their relationships. They're not humble enough to take personal responsibility for their own actions and their own thoughts. And if you want a relationship to thrive and to work really well, you cannot see yourself only in every single situation as the victim all the time or the hero. Do you know that's how we get saved, Pastor Paul? How you and I are able to get saved is to finally admit that we aren't the hero and we're not the victim. We're the villain. We're the perpetrator, and the gospel is the only story where the hero actually dies for the villain. And guess who the villain is? Us. Until we got saved, and then he made us children of God. Now, how many of you guys are thankful for that? All right, so it takes humility on Christ's part to make the relationship work, and then it takes humility on our part to unite us, and now we have oneness with God because of humility. But if we have pride, of course we're going to think we can get to heaven on our own. You know, we're going to brag about how we got there, right? Aren't you glad we're not saved by our own works? For by grace are you saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It's the gift of God. Not of works, lest any man should boast. I love that part. Because if we got there based on our works, we would brag about it, wouldn't we? We'd be like, Pastor Cody, how'd you get here? I'm like, shoot, let me tell you. Let me tell you all the amazing things that I did to earn this spot in heaven. And God's like, no, you didn't get there on your own. The only way we earn or attain heaven is through the grace of God, despite our sin. You know, when we finally admit, you know, I'm the villain, I'm the sinner, and God, I'm a sinner, I confess that, and you're the Savior, that's how we get saved. There are two ways to get to the top of a mountain. You can climb yourself or use the ski lift. What's cool about your city is there's mountains. We don't have mountains where we're at. It's so flat where we live, you could watch your dog run away for 3 days straight. It's just... So I saw your ski lifts, you know, on the mountain over here. It's just like turn down the street and it's like, oh, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous. But with this imagery in mind, consider how some of us are trying to climb mountains in our own lives. In pride, instead of asking or accepting the lift pass from the ski instructor in humility in order to be carried up, we decide we're just going to climb it ourselves. I'm just going to make it up there by myself. I don't need God. I don't need help. And I think a lot of us are wounded. I mean, we've asked for help before and people have hurt us. And maybe we project that on God as though God's going to do the same thing another human did to us. Or we can go to God and God's willing to carry us up the ski lift when we're humble. In fact, James 4:10 says it this way: humble yourselves in the sight of God, and he shall what? Who's going to lift you up? God. God's going to lift you up. I mean, if we're honest, we're insufficient to make our marriages thrive and to raise our kids in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And when we face situations and circumstances that come our way that are so overwhelming, we just have to humble ourselves and say, God, I'm insufficient. I need you. He'll lift you up. Let him lift you up. That's a great way to experience him. James 4:6 says it this way: but he gives more grace. Wherefore he says, God resists the... What does he do? He resists the pride. See, look, relationships can't work with pride. God resists that. I can't work with this. But he gives grace to the humble. So the best way to the top of the mountain is to humble yourself. To humble yourself is to not make life all about yourself. That I'm here as a conduit of God for people to experience God through me. And they can experience God's love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and temperance. As much as I would love for God to stand right here and give you a hug and you to experience those things, he's not. So he's going to show up through us. He's going to show up through your church family. And your spouse gets to experience God's love, joy, and peace. And you get to come here as a single and experience God's love, joy, and peace, because maybe you're not experiencing that at home or at your workplace. But you do get to experience it here. And other people, one of your purposes of living here is that other people can experience God through you. Sometimes that's the most compelling argument for God's existence, is God in you and through you. So humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less and less. So pride is the root of Sodom's destruction, and all their actions flowed from this place of pride. And so from that place of pride was this self-centered hedonism at the expense of other people's well-being. That's really what it is. Pride just destroys other people because you don't really care about them. What you care about, what I care about, is what I can get out of them. And once I'm done with them, it's I'll move on to the next host. So the quickest way to build up your relationship is to humble yourselves. Marriage only works when a committed man and woman humble themselves before God and each other, and they make it about us, not about me. Number 2, generosity. Generosity. So humility. Number 2, generosity. He says because that city was destroyed because of their pride, their fullness of bread. Now, how many of you guys, I saw bread downstairs. How many of you guys love to be full with bread? I saw loaves of bread. How many of you guys like to be full of bread? Raise your hand. Okay, 2 people. That's great. All the rest of you enjoy starving. That's great. Fullness of bread is an interesting, poetic way of saying I have all my needs met. All my needs are met. Now, how many of you guys are thankful you live in a country where your needs are met? Maybe not all your wants, but all your needs are met. I'm pretty sure most of you had some food in the fridge. You had something in the pantry. They were full, but they didn't share their abundance with those in need. By the way, it's okay to be full. Don't feel guilty about that. Thank God for it. Thank God for his provision. But it's not okay to be greedy when it's in our power to be generous. This greed really was an outflow of pride. They didn't have those resources to bless others. They consumed those resources to feed their pride. And it's okay to have plenty. What is not Christ-like is to keep it all for yourself. Just think about this. Generosity is a characteristic of God, and it's a characteristic of godliness. Generosity is really the antidote to greed. If you want to combat your greed and your self-centeredness, be generous. Generous with your time, generous with your gifts, Generous with your presence, that when you're talking to somebody, you're all in, you're looking them in the eye, you're giving them the most precious gift, which is yourself. John 3:16, you talk about God being generous, because I love that we serve a God that's never going to ask you to do something he's not willing to do himself. For God so loved the world that he, isn't that one of our verses that young man came up and read? God's a giver. God's generous. That's why the relationship works. He's generous. Luke 6:38, give and it shall be given unto you. A lot of people, the reason why they don't have friends is because they're not giving. He that has friends must show himself friendly. First step is to show up. First step is to show up. Proverbs 11:24 says, there is that scattereth and yet increaseth. In other words, they are giving, they're generous, they scatter, and yet they keep increasing. And there are those that withhold more than meat, but it tends to poverty. The stingy always seem to be needy, but the generous always seem to be blessed. We have an interesting hobby in Michigan called falconry. Have you guys ever heard of this? Maybe you guys do this here, falconry? Okay. Some of you, if you love animals, you might not like falconry. So I'm not advocating this. I'm just telling a story. Okay, Pastor Paul? All right. So I'm not saying do this or like we love it. But falconry is really interesting. Is you catch a bird, a falcon. If you don't know what one is, look it up on your phone. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful bird that is a predator, and there are people who use them to help them hunt small animals. But the way that you train a falcon to hunt without flying away in freedom is to only give it just enough food that it won't die, but they'll have just enough that they can hunt. Not enough for them to thrive, but just enough for them to catch what they want, to get what they want. And I think in a lot of relationships, it's like that. It's like one spouse is giving them just enough that they can keep going another day, but not enough for them to thrive, not enough for them to be free. And falconry is so interesting because when you let the bird go, it's going to find a rabbit, it's going to kill the rabbit, and then the owner gives it just enough to live another day. But God wants you in your relationships to be very generous so the person that you're with can really thrive, can really be free. So why be generous? Because it's the surest sign of gratitude. I'm just thankful for you. Why be generous? Because God knows that generosity is how you and I develop passion. In fact, in Matthew 6:19, it says, lay not up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth or rust doth corrupt, where thieves break through and steal. By the way, let me just stop there and just say, don't give your life to things you won't carry with you. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, or thieves break through or steal. In other words, have an eternal perspective in how you're investing your time. For where your treasure is, notice this, there will your what? Heart be also. Your heart is your mind and your emotions and your will. So in other words, if you want a heart for your spouse, you want a heart for your kids, you want a heart for your church, God says you have to invest in it. If you're not investing in those things, you're going to lose heart for those things. Like marriage doesn't make you happy, you make your marriage happy. And you make your marriage happy by investing in it. It's not like it's greener on the other side of the fence. It's greener where you water it. It's greener where you invest in it. So I encourage you, if you want a passion for your home or your church or your community, start giving. So let me just give you some ways you can invest in your marriage really quick, because this is a family weekend. But women need financial, relational, and spiritual security. And if you as a man can provide those things generously, she could really thrive. And she can thrive in her femininity. knowing that those needs are met by her man that vowed to provide and protect and be present with her. For men, they need respect. Men need to know that their wives are thankful for them and are glad that they chose that person and show gratitude. And so let me just share with you a couple of things you guys can do as a couple that would be really generous for each other is focus quality time together. Focus quality is unrushed, unhurried, focused. Means it's not the TV, but it's you guys sitting across from each other, maybe walking on the beach. You guys live in such a beautiful place, so many hiking spots, but you're spending focused quality time. You have to be intentional about it. Time together doesn't just happen. You have to make time for each other. You have to make time for your kids. It's not just going to come your way. How many of you guys know there's a lot going on in our lives? A lot of things that want to grab our attention. But if you're married, you have a responsibility to give your spouse focused quality time. Respond generously to bids for connection. Forgive generously. There's so many other ways. But for sake of time, I'm going to move on to my third point, which is responsibility. We have to take responsibility. Now, notice he says the reason why Sodom was destroyed is because of their pride, their fullness of bread. And then this third one, this idleness of time, an abundance of idleness. Now, idleness just simply means an aversion to labor. Somebody doesn't want to work. A reluctance to exertion. How many of you guys know a marriage takes work? Having a family takes work. It's not just going to be happy. You have to make it happy. A reluctance to exertion, either of body or mind, a laziness, slothfulness, or sluggishness. And I think it's deceitful to yourself to believe that avoiding discomfort is the ultimate place of happiness and fulfillment. And I think for a lot of people, they think, the happiest I'll be is when I'm sitting on a beach with my feet up with a pina colada. And it's like, that's when I'll be happy, but all the other times in my life, I'm miserable. But I think it's when we fulfill our responsibilities and we find fulfillment and joy in being able to give and be generous. And as a husband or a wife or a parent or a grandparent or a church member, there's responsibilities to those roles. And when you are fulfilling those responsibilities, you are fulfilled. Like we were made to work. We were made to have adventure and to have purpose and meaning. Without those responsibilities, what's life all about then? I'm really glad that God gave us things to build, that he created this earth for work. In fact, work was here before the curse was ever implemented. God gave Adam work. In fact, God told the children of Israel to rest, or in fact, God rested on the seventh day before the curse because he knew the work would never be done. Now, I think for a lot of men especially, they'll say, I'll rest when the work's done. And God already knew the work will never be done. There's too much work to do. And so God implemented a day of rest to force us to rest. And thankfully, in the New Testament, God is our rest. And so we could rest in him. But we're made for work. We're made for this responsibility. And I see a lot of aimless young men especially who don't want responsibility. They don't want to be over anything. They don't want to be married. They don't want to have kids. They don't want to build a business. And so they become bitter and resentful and angry about life. But we were made for responsibility. So marriage relationships do not drift into fulfillment. They get there intentionally. Notice what it says in Ephesians 5:13. It says, but all things that are reproved are made manifest by the light. For whatsoever doth make manifest is light. Wherefore he says, awake out of your what? Your sleep. And arise from the dead, and Christ shall give you light. See then that you walk circumspectly, which means to keep your head on a swivel. How many of you guys know the devil, this world, and our own flesh want to take us out? So walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Wherefore be ye not unwise, but understand what the will of the Lord is. I want you to focus on redeeming the time. The phrase redeeming the time means to buy up the time. to buy it up. Because now, if you don't buy up your time, you don't plan your day, something or someone else will. So God says, you redeem the time. You plan out how your day is going to look, how you're going to intentionally love your spouse, how you're going to intentionally love your kids, or how am I going to intentionally love my church family? You redeem the time knowing that the days are evil. There's enough evil out there to fill your time for you if you don't want to fill it up. So imagine going to a tech store and inquiring about the latest smartphone. And the tech guy begins to explain all its many features, and you get excited. And then you ask him to turn it on and show you how it works. Now imagine the tech guy saying, well, it's not meant to work. It was made to be admired. That'd be worthless, wouldn't it? How pointless would that be? Sometimes we treat the Christian life that way. We're thankful that the Lord has given us tools, He's given us resources, He's given us a pastor, a great pastor, and pastor's wife. Paul and Jeanette are incredible. You guys are an amazing church. This place is awesome. It's great to see this place packed with people and how God is using this church to be salt and light in Vancouver. It's just incredible. I love what God's doing here. We were made for more than just to be admired. How pointless would that be? And we treat the Christian life this way. We're thankful that the Lord's given us tools, He's given us resources, yet we don't use them, yet we want to be admired. So we are stewards of this life, and everything that we have is really His. We're stewards of this life. So when it comes to this idea of responsibility, I want you to think, now how many of you guys are saved, by the way? I don't know you very well, but how many of you are born again, and you've given your life to Jesus? You're willing to confess Him as Lord? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. Many of you. And there's some of you that might be still searching and looking and listening. And that's totally great. We're so grateful for that you're here. And I'm thankful for that. But when you got saved, your life is no longer yours anymore. Whose is it? It's not my life anymore. It's hid in Christ. It's His, right? And then when you got married, you stood at an altar and you looked at your bride or your husband. You said that you were going to forsake all others, keep yourself only for them, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. Corinthians tells us that when you get married, your body's no longer yours, it's your spouse's. So when you get saved, it's like, my life isn't mine, it's His. My marriage isn't mine, it's each other's, and it's God's. My kids aren't even mine, they're His. We're just stewarding the gifts that God has given us. That's the biblical perspective of life. We don't own it, we're not owners, we're stewards. When I was living in Las Vegas, Nevada, I had just bought a used set of Callaway irons and a big Bertha driver and an Odyssey putter. And I hit a round of golf, and I came back, put my clubs in the garage, went inside to get a glass of ice cold tea. And I went back out to my garage and noticed that my clubs were gone. Somebody stole them. They ran to my garage, grabbed my golf clubs, ran out. I was so upset. You feel violated when somebody touches your stuff, right? And so I look at all this stuff down the street, and it's like some of my stuff is strewn down the street. I go back and I sit down on the couch, and I was pretty upset that somebody stole my clubs. I was a little bitter. But I remember this passage. I remember this principle that we're stewards of life. And I thought, they didn't steal my clubs, they stole God's clubs. And so I looked up and said, God, somebody stole your clubs. I started to feel bad for the guy who was driving around with God's golf clubs. I remember when our oldest daughter, Cody, who's sitting right here, she, when she was 4 years old, was diagnosed with cancer. And I remember we didn't know what was going to happen. There's a lot of fear and trepidation and wonder and worry. And I remember going up to this little chapel on the top floor of the Helen DeVos Children's Center, and this principle came to mind as well. I thought, she's not mine. She's His. And Lord, if you want to take her at 4 years old, that's up to you. which made me thankful for maybe the 4 years I had instead of being bitter about the years I'd miss out on. It's like, if she's yours, help me to steward her. This church is not mine. It's not Paul's. This church is yours, Lord. What do you want us to say? How do you want us to lead this place? My home is not mine. It's yours. Lord, how do you want this home to be? What do you want to come through that TV? How do you want us to conduct ourselves in this home? Lord, we're stewards of this. So in a family, we all carry responsibility. And I want you to think of Jesus. He's in the business of creating order out of chaos. And maybe you've experienced a little chaos in your home or internally or in your relationships. I just want to say that Jesus mended our relationship with him through humility. He gave his life to save a wretch like me. Love me unconditionally. Well, that can help me love people unconditionally too. Jesus restored our relationship, created order out of chaos through his generosity. He says, I give my life for the sheep. He fed the 5,000. He paid for our sins. He's so generous. If any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all men liberally and doesn't make fun of them. And then, did Jesus take responsibility? Oh yeah, in fact, he took responsibility for your sin. He says, I'm going to die as though it was me that did your sin. He who is rich became poor so that we who are poor can become rich. He took our sin on the cross, took responsibility for our bad decisions so that we can have oneness with him. It's unbelievable. And for your relationships and my relationships to thrive, we have to strive for the same thing: humility, generosity towards one another, and personal responsibility. And I hope and pray that this passage and these thoughts really would help you thrive in your relationship.